What's up everyone, welcome back to another video. So today we're going to be going through the top 5 most disturbing animal attacks or encounters that I've heard of here in Australia. Now, as you would have seen throughout my videos, Australia is infamous for having some of the deadliest, but in particular most venomous creatures on earth living in this country. And with so many potentially dangerous animals living in such close proximity to humans, terrifying encounters are almost inevitable. Now, I've been lucky enough to work with nearly all of the most dangerous animals in this country over the past decade of filming. And for the past 5 years, I've spent half of each year, so 6 months of each year, road tripping by myself around Australia looking for these creatures. And during that time, I've personally been stalked by giant saltwater crocodiles. I've been attacked by dingoes while camping alone by myself in the outback. And in one of the stories that you're going to hear in this episode, I was actually present when a woman was stung by one of the most venomous sea creatures on earth. It was crazy. She went from screaming in pain to being almost non-responsive at our campsite. Now, I'm not only going to be teaching you how to remain safe from all of the creatures that you'll see on this list, but I'm going to be showing you my personal encounters that I've had out in the wild with each of them. Let's get into it. Number 5. Grabbed by a saltwater crocodile. Now for me, this is probably the most terrifying attack on this list because it happened in a section of river that I've actually visited before, a section of river that I've filmed in before. Sadly, every year here in Australia, there's always a few people who are eaten by big saltwater crocodiles. And back in 2005, so this was nearly 20 years ago, there was a couple who went camping at this same section of river. Now, this remote river is located in Cape York, Queensland, and the area that they visited is actually one of the most stunning places that I've ever traveled to. Vast stretches of grass plains with a massive freshwater river snaking through the middle of the landscape. And it's a place that's known to hold big saltwater crocodiles. I'm pretty sure it's the most densely populated river with mature crocodiles. There might be 5 or 6 big mature crocs for every kilometer of river. It's a place where Steve Irwin himself spent a lot of his younger years catching and tagging crocodiles. It's super cool because we would have seen crocodiles in these rivers that Steve has actually caught. So in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, saltwater crocodiles were hunted very severely across the top end of Australia, to the point where there was only a few thousand crocodiles estimated to be left in the wild. Now, even back then, it was never fully safe to go near the water's edge or enter the water, even though there were less crocodiles. But since protecting them in the late 60s, early 70s, they've bred back up again, and nowadays it's definitely not safe to go swimming in any body of water in the top end of Australia where these crocs are present. Now, my mate and I have been lucky enough to explore these rivers in a small boat. He's actually welded bars onto the back of it near where the motor is to stop himself from getting grabbed by big crocodiles, because there's crocs in these rivers that are 2 meters bigger than 3 meter tinny that we're in. And you know, even with the bars welded onto the back of the boat, he always says the same thing, and it's that you don't want to be sitting still, because that's when a croc can come up and grab you off the back of the boat. You always want to keep moving, especially after dark. Now, late one afternoon in 2005, this couple were paddling in a canoe in the same stretch of river that we were cruising up in this boat. Using a canoe in crocodile country is a huge mistake when it comes to croc safety here in Australia. Saltwater crocodiles are known to lurk silently beneath boats, sometimes waiting till a fish is caught before coming up and snatching it before it's even landed. But this time what happened was much worse. So while they were fishing, a crocodile surfaced next to the boat. This croc was over 4 meters long. It's a big male crocodile. He tried to fend it off with the oar, but this is a big animal. It lunged, grabbed his arm, and capsized the canoe. His wife actually managed to swim to the shore, but he disappeared without a trace. So how do you remain safe from this creature here in Australia? I think the biggest takeaway from this tragic story is to not go swimming, canoeing, kayaking, or even standing near the water's edge in waterways that hold these crocodiles. Stay approximately 5 meters back from the water's edge. You know, these big crocodiles can reach lengths of over 6 meters long. The biggest crocodile that's ever been on record, its name was Lolong, caught in the Philippines, measured 6 meters and 17 centimeters. So you know, a crocodile of that size can launch itself over half of its body out of the water. Stay back from the water and you'll be fine. Encounter number 4, bitten by a king brown snake. So this next close encounter with one of the most venomous snakes on earth took place in an area that many people consider to be the start of the outback, a very dry landscape. And it's a region that I've visited on several occasions because of the high number of snakes that actually live there. So thousands of people are bitten by snakes every year here in Australia. Of those, a few hundred require medical attention. And from that group, only about 2 people die annually from snake bites in this country. And sometimes these encounters aren't the person's fault, and they're not the snake's fault either. It's just an unlucky situation. Now, out of the 25 most venomous snakes in the world, 20 of them are found here in Australia. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this story isn't only because it's one of the scariest snake bite stories that I've ever heard, but we were actually lucky enough to run into the person who saved this woman's life in a pub in the middle of the outback, and he told us the full story of what happened. So on January 12th, 2024, a woman in her 20s had fallen asleep in her bed. At some point during that night, she was woken up by a sharp pain in her finger, and she quickly realized that this was a snake bite. And it wasn't just any snake, it was a bite from one of the most venomous snakes on earth, the mulga snake, also known as the king brown. Luckily, this guy who we talked to reacted quickly. He wrapped her up in a compression bandage to slow down the venom that was now moving through her lymphatic system. She got airlifted to hospital from the outback and actually survived. So how do you remain safe from venomous snakes here in Australia? I think the biggest takeaway from this story is to keep all of your windows and your doors shut of your home. Over the past decade or so, I've had multiple snakes, some venomous and some not, mostly carpet pythons, enter our house because they're looking for shelter. But I'd always recommend to keep a compression bandage close, even if you're going out on a hike like I am right now in the bush. If I was bitten by a highly venomous snake out here, I'd be very confident in surviving if I applied the correct first aid. Story number 3. Paralyzed by a blue-ringed octopus. Now, this next encounter happened earlier this year down in New South Wales, and it's easily one of the most terrifying encounters on this list. On Wednesday, February 5th, a 43-year-old man was swimming at Balmoral Beach around midday. He was standing in waist-deep water when he accidentally stood on an oyster shell. He actually picked the shell up with his foot, respect, and passed it to his left hand, and that's when he noticed that latched onto his thumb was a blue-ringed octopus. Now, I've found blue-ringed octopus in a number of locations around Australia, and one thing that all of these places have in common is there's a lot of areas that these octopus can hide in. Oysters, shells, small crevices within the rocks. And these creatures, although no larger than a golf ball, carry enough venom and enough of a potent venom to kill multiple adult humans. And like most bites from this creature, it was almost painless. Within minutes, his lips went numb. He began to feel confused and struggled to speak. He later recalled, "I honestly thought I was gonna die. I couldn't speak. I could hear the doctor saying, 'Open your eyes,' but I couldn't move." So he was conscious, but completely paralyzed, which is what I think is probably the scariest thing about this creature's venom. You know, the toxin that's in this creature's venom is 1,000 times more potent than cyanide. So emergency crews placed him into a coma, an induced coma, for about 20 hours. And when he woke up, he experienced 2 more episodes of temporary paralysis. Thankfully, he was released by Friday afternoon, but it wasn't over for him just yet. Just one day later, on Saturday, February the 8th, the man was shopping at a supermarket when he suddenly felt his body failing again. The next thing he knew, he was on the ground, completely paralyzed. He was lucky enough to make a complete recovery, and surprisingly, this is something that's good to hear, he still swims at the same beach to this day. So how do you remain safe from blue-ringed octopus here in Australia? It's such a hard one because it's such a rare situation. I'm not going to stop anyone from picking up shells on the beach. And to make you all feel a little bit better, in the past century, the past 100 years, there's only been 3 fatalities from blue rings here in Australia. So personally, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Go enjoy your time at the beach. Encounter number 2, bitten by a funnel web spider. Now, growing up here in Australia, most of us were told as kids to shake your shoes out if you left them outside for a prolonged period of time. And this was mainly because of a different species of spider known as the redback, which was notorious for hiding inside footwear. Now, when I was 9 years old, it was raining one morning and I needed to go collect some eggs for breakfast from the chicken coop, which was outside. Now, I had a pair of gumboots that had also been sitting outside for a few weeks, and without thinking, I put them on and instantly felt one of the worst pains that still to this day I've ever felt in my life, right on top of my right big toe. So I pulled my foot out, and crawling out of my gumboot was one of the biggest giant centipedes that I'd ever seen in my life, similar in size to the one you're seeing on the screen right now. Now, my foot swelled up, I couldn't walk for a few days, but that's nothing compared to the similar story that I'm about to tell you, which took place in February 2017, involving a pair of boots and the most venomous spider on earth. So a 10-year-old boy from Berkeley Vale, New South Wales, was helping his father clear out a shed at their home. So he picked up a pair of shoes, and inside, taking shelter, was the Sydney funnel web spider, the most venomous spider on earth. Now, it bit him on the finger. He actually later said it sort of clawed onto me, and all of the legs and everything crawled around my finger. I couldn't get it off, which is terrifying. And the reason why it's terrifying is because I know that during that time it was latched onto his finger, that spider would have been injecting more and more venom into it. And these Sydney funnel web spiders have the ability to kill someone within 15 minutes. Now, the boy's family rushed him to the hospital, where he received what's believed to be the largest dose of anti-venom ever administered here in Australia. I think it was 12 vials, which is crazy. Now, luckily he survived, and luckily these spiders only live within about a 200-kilometer radius of Sydney. If this species was more widespread, like the redbacks, the second most venomous spider here in Australia, the death toll would be much higher. Currently, there's only about 13 fatalities recorded. So how do you remain safe here in Australia from Sydney funnel web spiders? First off, if you're not in Sydney, you don't have to worry about it. If you are, don't leave your shoes outside, keep your house closed up, and also be careful while lifting up rocks and logs in your garden. These spiders are known for living in people's backyards. Encounter number 1, stung by an Irani jellyfish. Now, this next deadly encounter is a personal story that I've actually never told before. I've never gone into detail about it before, and still to this day remains the scariest encounter I've ever been a part of with an animal in the wild. So Gari, or Fraser Island, is the largest sand island in the world, located just off the coast of Hervey Bay. While some of the world's biggest sharks have been encountered off this island, there's also no shortage of highly venomous snakes, and dingoes roam in packs here. With all that being said, anyone who knows Fraser Island knows that it's a pretty safe place. Around 90,000 people camp here each year. And we were doing exactly that. So me and a bunch of my mates were camping on the west side of the island. Behind our campsite was one of the most beautiful freshwater creeks that I've ever seen in my life. And out the front was an ocean that was just as stunning. Now, we were mainly swimming in the freshwater creek behind our campsite because we knew that it was stinger season, and out the front there was the potential of getting stung by some of the most venomous jellyfish on earth. It's not even the most venomous jellyfish on earth, they're the most venomous creatures on earth. One late afternoon while the sun was setting, I went for a swim by myself out the front of our campsite, and I noticed that about 30 meters down the beach from me there was another couple swimming as well. Now, I was sitting in about chest deep water, and I noticed them get out and walk up the beach to another campsite. And as soon as they did, I didn't feel safe being out there by myself, so I did the exact same. But what they actually did was they got out of the water and walked up to a campsite just near theirs and asked if they should be worried because the girl had just been stung by something on her shoulder. Some little welts started coming up, but the people at that campsite said not to worry and that it was probably something like a blue bottle. Now, blue bottles are not jellyfish. They're actually known as siphonophores, and they're a stinging organism that lives out in the sea. They are painful, but they're not lethal. But within a few minutes, this lady was screaming in pain. She hadn't been stung by a blue bottle, she'd just been stung by an Irani jellyfish, one of the most venomous creatures on this planet. Now, what I think is the scariest thing about this jellyfish is that they're pretty much invisible. You know, the individual that she would have got stung by was most likely the size of my pinky fingernail. The bell of the jellyfish that translucent thing at the top. It's 1 to 2 centimeters long. Impossible to see in the ocean. And what we were actually doing was we were running down to the creek, the freshwater creek, behind our campsite, boiling hot water to the point where you could pour it on your skin and it wouldn't be too painful. And we were actually pouring it where she got stung. It kind of neutralizes the venom a little bit and makes it a lot less painful until you can get to medical help. The scariest thing about this situation was she actually went from screaming in pain to being almost non-responsive, and we could barely feel her pulse at our campsite. A helicopter landed on the beach in front of us and they took her to Bundaberg Hospital where she was treated, and luckily she survived. So a huge thanks to everyone who was on the beach that day. Everyone came together and helped her out, and it's scary to think because I go on a lot of these adventures out into the wild. All these animals that you see within this video I've encountered out there, and thinking about having to deal with something like that by yourself is terrifying. So how do you avoid getting stung by an irukandji? It's almost impossible, but you have to know that during this time of year, from the months October until June, it's stinger season in the top end of Australia, and from the top end of Australia all the way down to Gari, there's the possibility of there being venomous jellyfish. Now what you can do if you definitely want to remain safe from these jellyfish is wear something like a wetsuit, because the only way that it can sting you is if it touches your skin with those tentacles. Now I actually think these kinds of videos, although they're a bit different to what I normally film on my channel, they're really good to educate everyone about the deadly animals that live here in Australia, because I think all of these creatures are the most amazing species, and I think all of them should be protected by us. But I'd be lying if I said that they weren't potentially dangerous. These are some deadly creatures that we have to be mindful of while entering their habitat. But yeah, I hope you got a bit of a better understanding about some of these creatures featured in this video today. And if you want to see more videos, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below. Got a really epic adventure coming in about a week's time. We actually survived for 7 days on an island in the rainforest filled with some of the world's most venomous snakes. So stay tuned for that. What I'm gonna leave you with now is some of my encounters with the creatures featured in this list, and you can see how cool they really are. We started off with the saltwater crocodile.
This crocodile's about to jump over this little rock. We'll get a good look at him, see how big he is. He is massive. He's definitely over 4 meters. And it looks like he's missing a part of his tail as well. I reckon with the full tail, he could be pushing 4.2 to 4.5 meters. That's crazy. That is a massive animal. We're just gonna sit here and watch this take place. This is one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had with an animal, let alone a crocodile deep in Cape York. Yeah, he's on that. See it over? Yeah, look.
little blue-ringed octopus. Just sitting under this rock. This is one of the most venomous creatures on Earth, and we've found him out in these rock pools right here. This is something that we can't mess around with, because if I'm bitten, within about 10 minutes, I'd be laying down on the bank, fully paralyzed. Yeah, all the way out here, you're not surviving a bite from this species of octopus. But luckily enough for me, we have a plastic container. There we go. Take a look at that. Just down there. He's just a little fella. Okay, I'm gonna be careful. Look at those blue colors. So this is actually a blue-lined octopus. One of 4 species of blue-ringed octopus. Take a look at that. I'm shaking right now, but we got him in this container. You know, these blue-ringed octopus right here have 8 legs, 3 hearts, blue blood, can change colors to match their surroundings, and have one of the most toxic venoms on Earth. They were probably little organisms on an asteroid millions of years ago and landed out in the ocean and have evolved into these creatures. I wouldn't doubt it. So what happens if you're bitten by the blue-ringed octopus, one of the most venomous creatures on Earth? Most people who get bitten by this species don't even realize that they've been bitten until they start feeling the effects within the first 5 to 10 minutes, because it's said to be pretty much a painless bite. There'll be numbness around the bite site, you might feel a bit nauseous, you'll get dizzy, and what that's doing is it's slowly paralyzing you. It can kill about 20 adult men within half an hour. So yeah, if I was bitten on this remote coastline right here, by the time I actually got to help and got back, even if I did get a call away, you know, I don't think I'd be surviving this one. Pretty cool species though. So we just made it out to the rock pools. We're gonna be going for a night snorkel around this area. So the main 2 species that we're trying to find tonight is the blue-ringed octopus and the stonefish, 2 of the most venomous creatures on Earth. We might even try to catch them all the way out here. See how we go. There are some smaller sharks hanging around these rock pools, but we shouldn't have any problems running into any bigger ones. All right, let's go. Straight away, I found another blue-ringed octopus. This one was more focused on getting away and camouflaging itself rather than showing off those blue rings. It's quite a big wake-up call knowing that there's a good number of these octopus around me while I'm snorkeling in this rock pool by myself. Definitely gotta watch where I put my hands from now on. And after snorkeling around for 5 more minutes, I managed to track down one of my favorite fish, the estuary stonefish. Just a little fella, but he was pretty friendly. We ended up becoming mates. We got a stonefish. Take a look at that, mate. We found the most venomous fish in the world, and we found a blue-ring octopus, all in this one little rock pool right here. Now, I gotta be really careful. The tide's coming up, it's connected out to the ocean, so not only can bigger sharks get in here now, but there's a lot of waves coming over the rocks. You never really know what you're gonna find until you come out here and go on adventures like this, and this to me is so cool and such an epic way to end this video. All right, take a look at this right here. Look at that snake. That is an inland taipan, a fierce snake, the most venomous snake on Earth. And what's amazing to me is actually finding this snake on foot. Now I'm out here by myself filming this 3-day survival video, so there is no chance that I'm getting anywhere near this snake. So these snakes right here live within the cracks in the ground, and they only come out early mornings and late afternoons, sometimes throughout the night, because it's so hot out here in the desert. Now, being the most venomous snake in the world, you'd think that a lot of people would have died from getting bitten by this species. But since they're actually considered a rare snake and they're so hard to find, generally they're not aggressive, they won't go and attack people, there's been no deaths recorded from this snake species. Now, over the years, and even last year, there was a couple bites that happened out in this area, But generally, the only people who get bitten by these snakes are people who go looking for them. So generally, those people know the risks in coming out here. But yeah, just the patterns on this snake and that jet black head. They actually change colors seasonally. In winter, they're a much darker color. At the moment, as it's coming into summer, they lighten up. And if there's one thing I've learned over the years dealing with the deadliest animals in the world, is you can't get complacent. Complacency kills, especially in a place like this. You know, it's one thing coming out here when you've got other people who can treat you with first aid. But if I was bitten by this inland taipan out here, there's almost no chance that I'm surviving. And it's a scary thing to think. Even if I got back to the car after applying first aid, you know, driving hours back into the closest town, you'd probably end up feeling real dizzy, pass out behind the wheel, and that would be it. Now, a lot of the time, certain species of snakes will do something called a dry bite, where they'll bite you, but they won't actually inject any venom. Taipans are not known for that. Taipans are known, most of their bites will actually inject venom. So, you know, you might be really lucky, but I wouldn't be relying on that if you're bitten by this snake out here. I think this is really special, hey? Like, just this moment walking with such an amazing animal. He's out here doing his own thing, trying to find food, living in the cracks, warming himself up for the day. I feel very blessed that I'm able to hang with him for just a short amount of time. To have this kind of experience for this long with this snake is amazing, because generally when you see them, they'll shoot right back down the cracks that they came up. But the weird thing about this guy is there's cracks all through this area, but he's choosing to go over this way. The inland taipan, the fierce snake, the most venomous snake in the world. And we've got one sitting right in front of us here. See you later, mate. He just shot down a hole on the edge of this big grassland right here. All right, so we have just found the most venomous spider on Earth. Now, if we just lift up this little piece of bark, I just spotted him under here. I don't know where he is right now. So I'm just being very careful because we cannot afford to get bitten by this species of spider out here. Take a look at that right there. Look at that. If I just move this back, that is the Sydney funnel-web spider. Look at that, he's got red fangs. I've never seen that before with this species. It's crazy to think that this right here in front of me is arguably the most venomous spider in the world. And it's also crazy how common they are in this area of Sydney. Now, the reason why they're not considered to be the deadliest spider here in Australia is because the redback, which is much less venomous than this species, has actually killed more people over the years. But it's because of how common those redbacks are. Now, we found one earlier on in this video, but I would much rather get bitten by a redback than this spider sitting in front of us right here. Now, if we just touch him, you can see those huge fangs. And actually, if you look really closely, on that right fang, there's a drop of venom sitting on it. Now, unlike the redbacks, which are spread to a lot of areas around Australia, these guys don't go too far from around this area. There are other species of funnel-web spiders, but they're not nearly as significant as this species right here. Let's get a closer look at him. If we just get him up here, look at that. That is so crazy, and that is the species of spider that we wanted to find out here in the wild. And the most venomous spider on Earth, responsible for multiple human deaths here in Australia. But the good thing for me, if I was to get bitten by this species, since we've created an anti-venom here in Australia, there's been no deaths reported. And he's just as deadly as any of the snakes that I catch, any of the blue ring octopus that I find. And yeah, out of all the spiders that I've worked with, you know, huntsman's pretty timid animals. Even the redbacks, I'll handle them, but there's no way I'm letting this spider anywhere near me because you can see they're noticeably defensive. Now, they're not aggressive animals. They'll not necessarily attack you, but as soon as they see a big figure walking past them, they'll stick those fangs up, and they are really intimidating. But if you were bitten by this species, like the snake first aid, what you want to do is you want to stop that venom from traveling as quick as possible, because these spiders have been known to kill people pretty fast here in Australia. So what you do is you apply a compression bandage from the bite site all the way up the limb at which you were bitten on. Don't move, call for help, and you're probably going to be okay. Look at that. Just one of its fangs gently resting on that piece of wood right there.